Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about legal issues and the dental radiographer. This is on chapter 14 of your dental radiography textbook. So as always, we'll be going over the learning objectives. And number one is going to be first to define the key terms associated with legal issues. Number two, list federal and state regulations affecting the use of dental x-ray equipment and describe the general application of federal and state regulations relating to the dental auxiliary. We'll also describe licensure requirements for exposing dental images and discuss risk management and define the legal concept of informed consent. We'll also describe ways to obtain informed consent from a patient. We'll also discuss dental malpractice issues, including negligence and standard of care. We'll discuss the concept of the state statute of limitations and the legal significance of the record, and discuss how confidentiality laws affect the information of the record. We'll discuss the patient's rights with regard to the dental record and describe the legal implications of patients' refusal to have dental x-ray images exposed. This is my favorite one. Okay, so the purpose is to discuss general legal concepts, including various regulations as they apply to the dental radiographer who exposes the dental images for patient care. Also, to address the issues of confidentiality and documentation. The dental radiographer must be aware of the legal implications involved in taking these images. So there are laws that exist that govern the use of ionizing radiation in dentistry. And although the dental auxiliary must be informed of and comply with these regulations, there is a possibility of negligent care that exists when these images are not properly exposed or used in the first place. So it's the federal and state regulations that govern the use of dental x-ray equipment. Also, the federal law controls who can take dental images, as well as the proper training and certification standards. So we'll go over next the federal and state regulations, as well as the licensure requirements. So the federal government has established requirements, including safety precautions for the use of dental x-ray images made and sold in the United States. For example, the Consumer Patient Radiation Health and Safety Act outlines requirements for the use of dental x-ray equipment. This law also establishes guidelines for the proper maintenance of the x-ray equipment and requires that anybody who performs the dental imaging procedures must be properly trained and certified. In addition to federal laws, state, county, and city laws may affect the use of dental x-ray equipment. Most states have laws that require regular inspection of the equipment, for example, every 5 years. And some state laws also require that the dental radiographer be trained and certified or even licensed to expose dental images. So all of the x-ray machines that were sold in the United States after 1974 must meet federal regulations that include safety specifications for minimum filtration and accuracy of milliamperage and kilovoltage settings. There are many states that require x-ray machines to be registered, and they charge a fee for this registration. And most states require that dental x-ray equipment be inspected about every 5 years. So the licensure requirement may include obtaining additional certification in dental imaging, performing dental imaging procedures only under the direct supervision of the dentist. So that means the dentist must be in the building and they must be aware that you are taking the x-rays. Also, the following restrictions concerning the type of dental images that may be legally exposed. So the Consumer Patient Radiation Health and Safety Act is a federal law that requires persons who take dental images to be properly trained and certified. And each state deals with this differently. So the legal issues that have to deal with the patient are: 1, risk management; 2, malpractice issues; 3, patient records; and 4, patients who refuse images. Risk management is extremely important in dental imaging. Risk management refers to the policies and procedures that should be followed by the dental radiographer to reduce the chances that a patient will file legal action against the radiographer or the dentist. Risk management policies are designed to reduce the likelihood of malpractice lawsuits against you or the dentist. Also, the dental radiographer must be careful never to say anything negative about the X-ray equipment or how it is working. Statements made by anyone at the time of an alleged negligent act are admissible as evidence in court. So there are a few aspects that deal with risk management. And one of these aspects is something called self-determination. And this involves persons or anyone seeking healthcare services and the fact that they have the legal right to make choices about the care they receive, including the opportunity to consent to or refuse treatment. It is a dentist's responsibility to discuss the need for images and treatment procedures with the patient. Another aspect is something called informed consent. And this is information presented to the patient that include the purpose and potential benefits of the images, anyone or the people that are responsible for exposing the images, the number and type of images, the possible harm that may result if the images are not exposed, the risk associated with X-ray exposure, and the alternative diagnostic aids that may serve the same purpose as the images. So patients must give informed consent for dental images as well as any other procedure. So another aspect is disclosure, and this is the process of informing the patient about the particulars or anything that has to do with exposing dental images. An informed consent is defined as consent given by the patient following complete disclosure. So informed consent cannot be given unless the patient is given complete disclosure. I want you to understand the way those two are connected. So the purpose of the informed consent includes the purpose of the procedure and who will perform it, any potential benefits of receiving the procedure, as well as the possible risks, and the opportunity to ask questions. The dental radiographer must be careful to use lay terms in a way that the patient understands. However, you should not oversimplify an explanation. So calling radiation harmful might make a patient easy. So we never want to just say that. Instead, we want to explain to the patient that many common things are harmful in excess. Even water is harmful in excess. Radiation is just something that patients are exposed to every day, even from the sun. So we'll want to discuss various situations in which this lack of informed consent may be shown. So for example, if a patient walks into the office complaining of soreness on a particular side of their mouth, we'll want to make sure that we let them know that certain x-rays are going to be taken, and we'll let them know who's going to be taking it. We'll also want to let them know some of the benefits. So we want the doctor to be able to make a diagnosis so that we can treat it. Also, we want to discuss the risk of radiation, as well as when we talk about the risk of radiation, we don't want to talk about radiation in a harmful sense. Again, we want to talk about it in such a way that although some or excess radiation is harmful, the tiny bits of it that they'll be receiving in the X-ray room in order to diagnose any caries or any lesions is going to outweigh the small, tiny risks associated with the very small amounts of radiation that they'll be receiving. Also, we want to make sure that we give them opportunity to ask questions. So if we just go ahead and explain the risks and benefits with them and then just continue taking x-rays, we have forgotten to give them an opportunity to ask questions. And this is a situation where the lack of informed consent is. So just be aware of that, and make sure that we're completing everything that has to deal with informed consent, just to cover yourself as well as the dentist. It's the dentists that are legally accountable or liable to supervise the performances of dental auxiliaries. However, the dentist and the dental auxiliary may both be sued for the actions of the auxiliary. So when do you think a radiographer might be held liable? So this can be basically anything done maliciously or with ill intentions to either harm the patient, or if you don't take into account their concerns. So if a patient walks in and tells you, I don't want x-rays, and you simply, out of frustration, take them into the operatory without x-rays, without explaining the risks and benefits, that's considered something that's done maliciously. Also, if you agree with the patient, or the patient agrees to only take 1 or 2 films, and then out of frustration, you continue taking more films, or you up the KVP in an attempt to, I guess, show them or show them who's boss, or who's in control. Things like that are things that are malicious, and that's something that you can be liable for. So malpractice results when the dental practitioner is negligent in the delivery of dental care. And negligence is when the diagnosis made or the dental treatment delivered falls below something called the standard of care. So the negligent care may result from the action of or lack of action of either the dentist or the dental auxiliary. So I mentioned standard of care before, and this is the quality of care that is provided by the dental practitioners in a similar locality under the same or similar conditions. So, for example, the number of films exposed, as well as the quality of the images, may be an important issue in a malpractice suit. So there is something called the statute of limitations, and this is a time period during which a patient may bring a malpractice action against either yourself or the dentist. And it's the responsibility of the dentist to review and report all information presented on dental images and acquired data sets. So states govern the duration of the time with which a patient may bring a malpractice action against the dentist or the auxiliary. And frequently, it's not until the patient seeks care from another dental professional that the patient finds out that the previous dental treatment may not have been, or may have been, negligent, or something that fell below the standard of care. So within your patient records, the documentation for specifically dental radiography or dental images has to include the informed consent. It has to include the number and the type of images exposed. It has to include a reasoning or why these dental images were taken, as well as a report, which includes diagnostic information obtained from the interpretation of the images. So this would be something like your patient chart, where the dentist put in notes regarding what he found or what the findings were from those images that you exposed. And confidentiality there are state confidentiality laws that protect information. So basically all the information contained in the dental record, including the information on the dental images, is confidential or private. So to the extent that the state laws do not otherwise require disclosure. State confidentiality laws protect this information and generally prohibit the transfer of the information to non-privileged persons. So what a non-privileged person is someone who is not directly involved with the treatment or with the patient. It's not appropriate for any dental professional to discuss a patient's care with another patient or with office or staff members who are not involved in the treatment of the patient. Likewise, sharing dental images with others not involved in the patient's care is considered a violation or breach of confidentiality laws. So non-diagnostic images are sometimes unavoidable. We all know this, but as a competent technician, you should be able to keep these to a minimum. And regarding documentation, it's very important to document the exposure of dental images that are of poor quality and non-diagnostic reflect poorly on not only yourself, but on the dentist. Legally, the dental images are the property of the dentist. Now, this is something a lot of patients have a hard time understanding. They might think it's their body, it has to deal with their health. They paid for the images, they are theirs. So patients do have the right of reasonable access to the records. So we can give them copies of the records, but we should never give them originals. That's because the dental records and dental images should be retained indefinitely. So when you have a patient that has trouble understanding that they do not own the images, we need to explain to them that they are paying for the interpretation or the diagnosis of those images. So again, never give this or send images to, at least the originals to the patient, because those are owned by the dentist. But patients do have the legal right to reasonable access to the records. So I just want to make that distinguish. I want to distinguish those two. So although they are the property of the dentist, they do have the legal right to a copy of them. All right, so now getting to patients who refuse the exposure of dental images. So this is a situation that must be carefully considered by the dentist. So it is the right of the patient to not take any dental x-rays. So the dentist has to decide whether an accurate diagnosis can be made and whether treatment can be provided. So we have to be kind of, I guess, sensitive to their wishes, but at the same time, we don't ever want to work or diagnose an area without an image of the problem. Patients who refuse X-ray images need to understand that the risk from radiation is minute compared to the risk of working without an image. Certain things can happen, like we can drill in a tooth that never had decay in the first place. We can drill too far into the tooth, causing pulp exposure, which will require that the patient needs endodontics. Also, when dentists excavate decay, they need to be able to know the extent of the depth that they can achieve without hitting bone or without hitting any pulpal tissues. All right, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or ask me in class. We'll see you next time.